Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie. And in this video, I'm going to be looking at the weekend of October the 12th and 13th, 2024. Now, something happens over the weekend, and that is Pluto going stationary direct. And so in this video, I'm going to consider, what it might mean for Pluto to come to a standstill. I think many people have been focusing on this event, regarding it as being quite important, and there are people who it might be important for. It might be important for certain countries. For example, the United States. The United States has its Pluto at the end of Capricorn. Pluto is going stationary direct at the end of Capricorn, so we might want to consider what that might mean for the US, and perhaps also what it might mean for the presidential elections which are coming up at the beginning of next month. But before I look at Pluto going stationary direct, I want to consider what's going on this weekend from a perspective of the astrology and the I Ching. Just a reminder, if you like this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to indeed like it, indicate that you do really like it. And if you're not subscribed, I'd be really happy if you were to subscribe. It's great that I've just made 7,000 subscribers, but I suppose I want to reach the next target. I don't know whether that's 7,500 subscribers or 10,000 subscribers, but I suppose I need all the subscribers I can get. Anyway, let's look at what's happening this weekend. So there, by the way, top right, that is not the moon, it's actually Pluto, and I've stuck a Pluto glyph on top of it just to make the point clear. And Pluto is certainly emphasized this weekend because it is going stationary direct. So as far as how we understand what is happening over the weekend, so here is the positions of the planets for New York. Some people are asking, well, why do I put the positions of the planets for New York? I mean, why not somewhere else? Why not Washington DC perhaps, or Philadelphia or something? Well, on the east coast of America, it doesn't really matter where I choose, whether it's New York or Washington DC. I'm not looking at the ascendant, and because I'm not looking at the ascendant, it doesn't matter whether I go for New York or Tampa, Florida. The positions of the planets will remain the same, and I don't look at the ascendant when I'm looking at this broad picture of what's going on for example, for this is for the weekend or on any other day. So this particular chart for New York, it's set for the middle of the weekend. So it's midnight on Sunday the 13th, 2024. So you can see that the moon is in Aquarius in the middle of a weekend. So it's a moon in Aquarius weekend, and for most of us, the moon is going to be in Aquarius all weekend, and so we can think about all the associations with moon in Aquarius sort of being sort of independent-minded, perhaps wanting to do things differently, maybe even being a bit of a trendsetter. And, I suppose one sort of thinks of, Princess Diana. She had moon in Aquarius. In some ways, she was quite sort of regular woman, sort of from a wealthy background. She seemed very straightforward, but then her moon in Aquarius in the end kicked in, and she did things in a way which was very different. And I suppose, being filmed shaking hands with HIV patients without wearing gloves, doing things differently, that might be how moon in Aquarius works. And so I suppose, we should perhaps, with the moon in Aquarius, aspire to do things slightly differently. We mustn't just follow the crowd. But moon in Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. Saturn rules Aquarius, so I suppose there's a sense in which we are taking things rather seriously. We may be taking our individuality quite seriously. Now, the moon in Aquarius is making a trine to the Sun, and it is making a trine to Jupiter. that means that we have a Grand Trine in air over the weekend. So there's a real sense that things are moving, and it may be that this movement is perhaps more cognitive, more intellectual. It's a movement of ideas, and it's what we want to talk about. Maybe we talk about things too much, I suppose you could say, with a Grand Trine in air signs. Once we start talking, well, there's no limit. We just keep on going. So that is a possible manifestation. But I think it's quite nice. Moon Trine Sun, great aspect, Moon Trine Sun. Moon Trine Sun gives us a sense of harmony, of things just coming together, and it's not emotional. I mean, okay, the moon in Aquarius is, the moon is an emotional planet, but when it's Moon Trine Sun, it's not totally focused on the emotions with that Moon Trine Sun. It's about perhaps the easy flow of ideas, but it's also quite healthy Moon Trine Sun. I think it was Ptolemy said that babies born with a fortunate relationship between the sun and the moon have a good chance of surviving. Of course, he was talking at a time when very often children did not, when babies didn't survive very, very long. And he took the view that having a Moon Trine Sun or an aspect like that would facilitate survival. So in a way, this Moon Trine Sun is quite sort of life-giving. And the moon is also making a trine to Jupiter, and so again a very nice aspect, very fortunate aspect, and we can express ourselves very well, and there's a certain sort of optimism in the air. And then the sun is making a trine to Jupiter. Actually, that trine between Sun and Jupiter is not exact until Monday, I don't think, but certainly in Europe it's not exact, and Europe and further east it's not exact until Monday. And that's not the only thing going on, by the way, having this Grand Trine. Firstly, if you're in the Americas, well, in fact Europe as well, late on Sunday, sort of 5 to 9 in the evening, London time, the moon does move into Pisces. So in the evening in Europe, you might notice a bit of a change. Things do become a little more fluid, and there is sort of more emotion flying around. And perhaps the emphasis is more on feelings. Now, if you're in the Americas, then the moon will move into Pisces sort of early afternoon, I suppose early to mid-afternoon. Kind of depends where you are. I suppose it could be late morning if you're in Hawaii or Alaska. And there is another sign change, and that is Mercury moving into Scorpio Sunday evening, 2023 London time, 8:23 p.m. London time. So over the course of Sunday and Monday, there is a sign change, Mercury moving from Libra into Scorpio. So we've got two planets moving from, at the end of the weekend, moving from air signs into water signs. I'll probably say more about that on Monday, about what Mercury in Scorpio means. But with Mercury moving from Libra to Scorpio, that is a big change. Mercury is the mind, and it's how we communicate, it's how we think. So Mercury moving into Scorpio does create an increased level of intensity and mental focus, and perhaps by the end of the weekend there's a sense in which we're not going to want to say so much, and we're going to perhaps want to keep our thoughts to ourselves. But I will be talking about what that Mercury in Scorpio means at either in my video for the whole week or perhaps in my video for Monday. So actually there's quite a lot going on. And Mercury, by the way, just before it moves into Scorpio, very late Libra, it makes a square to Pluto. So Mercury square Pluto over the weekend, that does give us a slightly different picture. If we make the effort, there is scope for focus. We can be very focused over the weekend, and perhaps sort of mentally in our own way we can maybe be quite intense. So that is something that is possible. Now that is the position of the planets that weekend set for New York. just very quickly, moon is, by the way, at 20 degrees 20 degrees Aquarius, and at midnight in New York. And if we just look at the chart for Sydney, then set for Sydney, we see that the moon is only at 11 degrees Aquarius. So yeah, the moon is still in Aquarius. The moon is certainly going to be in Aquarius all weekend if you're in sort of Australia or New Zealand. But that Grand Trine in air signs that I was talking about, that's possibly going to be later in the weekend, sort of later in the weekend. Sort of. Perhaps towards the end of the day. You may not feel it quite so much so immediately over the weekend, but I think you will get it in the end. It's just you may have to be a bit more patient there. So that's one thing, perhaps one difference between Sydney, Australia and New York. Of course, when I say Sydney, Australia, I'm talking about generally Australia, New Zealand, Eastern Asia, but still we do get this Mercury in this moon in Aquarius feel to the weekend. So let me quickly look at the heliocentric picture. So let's give ourselves a different view. So from a heliocentric perspective, Mars still getting close to the conjunction, still getting closer and closer to the conjunction of Jupiter. Still not there, quite there yet, but I think we're starting to feel that energy beginning to flow with Mars getting so close to Jupiter. Perhaps we'll see that more reflected in the world around us. Governments, politicians, people in power feeling they've got something to do, feeling they really want to assert themselves, use whatever power they've got to get their way. Also, we've got Mercury making a trine to Saturn. So there's Mercury in Scorpio, trine Saturn in Pisces. Remember, these are heliocentric positions. So Mercury trine Saturn is a little bit serious, and I suppose we have to compare it with the geocentric aspect Mercury square Pluto. So Mercury square Pluto can be quite sort of intense and serious, and heliocentrically, Mercury trine Saturn, there are things we want to concentrate on, and if we feel that something is important, we need to give it everything we've got. It's not trivial, Mercury trine Saturn. But overall, from a heliocentric viewpoint, I don't think that there is a great deal to report at the moment. I suppose you could say that the Earth is moving to a conjunction of Chiron. So towards the end of a weekend, we might feel that Earth conjunct Chiron, sort of Earth conjunct Chiron. I suppose some of us might feel a sense of the wounded planet, Earth conjunct Chiron. Everything that's wrong with our planet, both on a sort of a human and environmental level, and we might be very aware of perhaps what's wrong with our planet, what's wrong with humanity, and perhaps what's needed to heal it, to heal ourselves as a group, not as individuals. But that might be one way of looking at it. And perhaps in order to improve things, we're going to have to do things differently, and that might be the impulse. That might be what's wanted of us to heal the Earth, to be able to do things differently, not to just feel that there's only one way of doing it. The usual approach is just unlikely to work out, or at least is unlikely to be very impressive. So let's now look at things from a perspective of the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for the weekend of October the 12th and 13th, 2024. Aries. I think Aries, you seem to be in quite a sociable mood at the moment. So recently you may have been feeling somewhat serious, that you had things to do, that you didn't want to be disturbed. But today, I do get a sense that you are, to a great extent, you are lightening up, and at least you want to lighten up. I think that there is still a sense, Aries, in which you do feel quite tense. There's something that is just annoying you, aggravating you, getting to you, and that you are sort of carrying that tension. But I think that it's now becoming easier for you to dissolve that tension, and I think part of a way to make yourself feel better is to try to be sociable, try to perhaps to engage with what other people are doing, with maybe what other people are worrying about. Perhaps if you switch the focus of your attention, not in terms of your concerns, but perhaps other people's concerns, talk to them, see what they've got to say, and in that way you might sort of get some, I suppose there could be interesting information, but it's also perhaps about stimulation. When you hear what's on other people's minds, when you listen to what they've got to say, it perhaps allows you to sort of forget about yourself. And also, I think that you are starting to become more energetic. And one reason you might be starting to become more energetic is that from a heliocentric point of view, we're getting Mars moving to a conjunction of Jupiter. Remember, this is a heliocentric conjunction, not a geocentric conjunction. So this Mars-Jupiter conjunction you're starting to feel it. And so it just feels that there is more that you can do. And you've got a little bit of surplus energy now, and you perhaps are wondering, where do you want to put it? And I think you're going to get more and more surplus energy. And yeah, you've got to find a way of expending it. As I said, there's some danger that if you might feel tense. I suppose you might feel tense if you were to just do nothing, isolate yourself. Yeah, then you might get really tense. But if you start taking an interest in other people, then I think that that would be very useful. And if you can just plan something socially over the weekend, I think that would be very useful. And I think that you're able to create a healthy emotional separation between yourself and others. So you can be very close to people on a sort of a mental level. You can, perhaps talk to them about, very serious subjects. You've got that closeness. But at the same time, you're able to maintain your individuality. You're not being overwhelmed by them. And, it helps that you can sort of work on a mental level. It's all about sort of mental communication. You're very good at that, talking about serious subjects, but it's all done on a mental level. And you're not compromising yourself. You're not overwhelming yourself emotionally. Your aura is intact. So if you kind of understand that or get it, I know it's a bit vague, but sometimes sort of aura, I suppose, is our psychic bubble, isn't that right? I remember long ago I went to a psychic festival, psychic fair in London. I think it was in Battersea, and it was in the sort of mid-80s, and someone had told me I had a hole in my aura. But I don't think there are any holes in your aura. I think you're all in order. And that means that you can get close to people without really taking any risks. Well, in most cases, always a capacity for taking risks by getting too close to people. But just keep things on a mental, intellectual and cognitive level, and I think that things are going to be fine. Taurus, it's the weekend, yes, but that doesn't mean to say that you should do nothing. There are definitely things to do this weekend. And, there is a Grand Trine in air signs. Okay, I don't know when this Grand Trine in air signs is going to be at its maximum. It may be late in the weekend, but it's going to happen at some stage. And this Grand Trine in air signs it's certainly about things moving quickly at a sort of a mental level, and it may nonetheless, in terms of how it affects you, may have an impact, may feel almost like a Grand Trine in Earth signs. I mean, not quite, but it's like, the moon is in Aquarius, and the moon is, it's at the top of the chart. It's in a sign which, in the Taurean horoscope, is quite ambitious. It's focused on, what needs to be done. And yes, it might be the weekend, but I don't think that you're going to feel that it really is weekend. I think that you will be feeling, at least indeed, I hope you're feeling that there are things you want to achieve, and I don't think it's a good idea for you to relax completely and do nothing. I mean, it's not that you can't enjoy yourself, but I just think it might be a waste. So if there are things that you're doing, perhaps you've been focusing on them at the end of a week, it would be unfortunate if a weekend just represented a hiatus, just a gap. So see what you can do this weekend, because if you can start to engage on things that are of practical importance, then I think you will do very well. I think you'll be able to cover a lot of ground, and actually things will run very easily for you. And maybe that's because it's the weekend. I suppose when you're doing things over the weekend, perhaps there's less resistance, there's less people to worry about. You can do things your way. So if you want to prepare things over the weekend, that would be a great time to do it. And if you're doing something, I don't know, if you have a business or some project that's very important to you, then just put some energy into it. There won't be much disturbance, and things will move. And it's not just that things will move on a sort of a physical level, but I think they'll also move on an intellectual level. You'll find that you're able to understand things that you just didn't get not so long ago will just be clear. Now, how do you arrive at this understanding? Well, one way in which you can arrive at this understanding is, I suppose, you could talk to people about it, get information, and at the same time you could do a lot of reading. That would be really useful. That would help you get it. But you don't need to reach any conclusions, I don't think. And possibly, Taurus, you should be quite choosy in what terms of what you do and where you go and what amusements you go for. I say that because there's some danger that some Taurans may be distracted by something that is not helpful. It's perhaps something that is imposed upon you, or there may be a temptation. So watch out for temptations. Something that seems interesting, seems amusing, seems glittery, but in your heart that it is a temptation. It may be the temptation to go somewhere that you haven't been before, but there's a bit of risk. I mean, risk in terms of, at best, wasting time. At worst, or taking a real risk, doing something stupid. Most Taurans, this is not an issue, but I thought I should mention it, just in case. So Taurus, as you move into the weekend, really start to think about what is important, what matters, and give yourself a chance to concentrate on the things that matter to you, and matter to the whole way in which you conceive your ambitions, because I do think you can move forward with your ambitions, and I think that once you get going, you'll have the capacity to put in a lot of work, and you won't mind doing the work. That's what's key. It'll just feel natural, and I think you'll be helped by the fact that you won't be bothered, you won't be disturbed, and yeah, it helps it as a weekend. If you're working over the weekend, for example, then I think that you're going to have a great time. Things will move, but if you're not working, then planning something, whatever's important to you, do the planning, and I think you'll be, in the end, I think you'll be very pleased with the results. Gemini, Mercury is changing signs this weekend. Now, it makes the sign change. Okay, it makes the sign change in the evening on Sunday, sort of London time. So if you are in Asia, Australia, or New Zealand, you're not going to feel the sign change until Monday. But I suppose I just need to let you know that this sign change is happening, and it may be a feature of Sunday. If you're in the Americas, it would take place sort of around lunchtime on Sunday. So Mercury it's moving from Libra to Scorpio, and that is a big deal. Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, so when it changes sign, when it moves from a water sign into an air sign, that does make a big difference. Mercury is, in many respects, is the way you express yourself. So moving from Libra to Scorpio, you perhaps need to start preparing for a time when you perhaps are more emotional than usual, when or at least your emotions start to matter, and you are perhaps having a more serious approach to life. Life is not just about amusement, enjoying yourself. It's also about making sure that everything is properly organized, that you feel right about everything, and your comfort may be a lot more important than usual. Now, this sign change, it does happen over the weekend. I don't think you're necessarily going to feel it this weekend, and it may not be until Monday that you feel the full impact of the sign change. And this is certainly something I'll be talking about when I look at what's happening to Geminis on Monday. Now, that's not the only thing going on. We do have a Grand Trine in air signs over the weekend, and you're a Gemini, you're an air sign, and so that Grand Trine in air signs, I think, is going to be important to you. You've got Moon in Aquarius, air sign, Jupiter in Gemini, air sign, and we've also got Sun in Libra, air sign. So they're making this sort of triangular relationship, and I think that from a Gemini perspective, I think that this Grand Trine in air signs is really very fortunate. It allows things to move, it allows things to proceed, and there's a sense in which things work. And so if there's something you want to do, something you want to achieve, something you want to make progress with, then now might be a time when you can really make things happen, and it just might be just so much easier for it to happen. Because, end of May, Jupiter went into Gemini. Jupiter went into your sign. And, that was good news. With Jupiter, of course, still in Gemini. Okay, Jupiter might be going retrograde, and you might be having a few doubts about some of the things you're involved with. You're asking yourself, did I do the right thing? Maybe you got involved in something with great enthusiasm, but now you're having second thoughts. And so with this Grand Trine in air signs, you have a chance to reconsider, and also to reevaluate, and perhaps even to rededicate what you've been doing. Perhaps it's a chance, just as Jupiter goes retrograde, you start to see the whole picture, why you're doing, what your hopes and your ambitions really were all about. And this Grand Trine in air signs may give you a sort of a new sense of optimism, a feeling that you can make things happen. You know, the sun is starting to make a trine to Jupiter, and the moon is making a trine to Jupiter, and that moon in Aquarius trine Jupiter is going to give you, you know, a great sense of vision and just a glimpse of what you can achieve if you give yourself a chance. But it's only a glimpse. It doesn't give you the full picture, and you know, you do have to be patient. And you know, this Grand Trine, we do have this Grand Trine in air signs. We also have Mercury making a square to Pluto. So just as Mercury is about to change signs from Libra to Scorpio, makes a square to Pluto. And it may be that that Mercury square Pluto isn't such a bad thing. It does give you a certain seriousness. It allows you to focus on the things that matter, and to realize that, you know, some things are important to you, and you need to make them special. You need to sort of bring them in close, and other things really are quite trivial. You got worked up about them in the past, but hold on, do you really need them? Probably not. So it can be an easygoing weekend, but it's not a trivial weekend. There is an underlying seriousness there because of Mercury square Pluto. So things move, and perhaps you understand what needs to be done and what you need to focus on. So Gemini, if you can sort of bring all of this together, then I think that you're not going to waste your time, and you're going to be able to really rededicate yourself. You perhaps had your doubts, but now you can see things all over, you know, see things afresh, and start to understand, you know, where you're really going. And I think that that Mercury in Scorpio is moving into Scorpio is important. And in my reading for Monday, I will be talking about it in more detail. Cancer. For most of the weekend, you are going to be in a state of mind where you do notice a lot. There are a few things that you're going to miss, and it's not just because you're seeing things on a material level. Indeed, the material level isn't really where the action is. It's really understanding what things mean and how to put things together. Put things together, having understood what is under the surface. And so you're going to be a difficult person to fool, maybe an impossible person to fool, because you're gonna see things, and it'll all be very quick and very immediate and very obvious. And I think you'll be helped by the fact that your mind and your heart will be pretty well synced. I mean, that can sometimes be a problem. You know, your mind is going one way, your heart is going in another way, and they kind of perhaps have a disagreement because they have different priorities. But I do think that mind and heart are going in the same direction at the moment, and you're helped by the fact that, you know, the moon is making a trine to Jupiter. It's making a trine to the sun. Moon trine sun, especially nice aspect, and that just gives a sense of harmony. You just do feel that you're really moving in the right direction, that things can happen quickly, and with Moon trine Jupiter, you just have an underlying optimism. So because the moon is trine Jupiter and it's trine the sun, you just have an underlying optimism, and it's not based on fantasy. It's just based on what you can see, and also in terms of what you can feel. But Cancer, it's extremely important that you do things your way. You don't want to have to worry too much about other people and, whatever issues they might be having, particularly if they're unimportant issues. People might want to talk nonsense. People might want to talk about things that you're not really interested in, but indeed are not interesting. And they might, I suppose, take your time for granted, but that's unnecessary. You just need to have a sort of a constant focus there. And yeah, that focus has an emotional side, and it is quite an intense thing, but it's also, we've got this active mind, and an active inquiring mind, which just fits so well with who you are emotionally, and your mind and your heart are almost sort of informing each other, and I think that is really nice. Now, I should mention that Mercury is about to move into Scorpio, and it may actually move into Scorpio over the weekend. Certainly late on Sunday if you're in the Americas. That might be more about Monday if you're in Australia and New Zealand. But with Mercury moving into Scorpio, it's, I would have said, quite a fortunate event, because Mercury's moving into Scorpio. Mercury's moving into a water sign, and you're a water sign. So with Mercury moving into Scorpio, you're just going to feel that you understand things, and you don't always have to think about them. It's just a natural understanding. And I think in your case, Mercury in Scorpio does perhaps allow you to enjoy the small things, because it is about enjoyment, and enjoyment is in some respects quite a personal thing. It's not something that needs huge amounts of people. You can just do something in your own way and get a quiet satisfaction from it. And so that might be a manifestation of how Mercury works when it does move into Scorpio. And overall, it's a weekend where things really are moving on many different levels, and if you want to make the most of it, though, it's just important that you have your own space, that you do things your way at your own time, and people are there for you, and it can be nice to have people around you, but within limits. Fundamentally, it's you that matter, and you can certainly, in a social sense, have too much of a good thing. And I think the problem about having too many people around you is that they would just take up your time and your energy, and you've, in many respects, have got better things to do than worry about other people and their problems. And if you've got too many people around you, it's just going to cloud things. And it's a time, Cancer, when you can really get to grips with what's happening around you, both mentally and emotionally. And too many people just creates a cloud of confusion. But that's something you don't need. You don't have to have it. So do stand up for yourself in a social sense. Leo, it may be that you have to pay some attention to the social environment. I don't think you'll entirely want to, because at some level at the moment you are feeling a little bit tense. And I think the reason for some of your tension might be the fact that the Sun is starting to move to a square to Mars. And this square to Mars, it sort of becomes exact on Monday, but I think you're starting to feel that this Sun-Mars square. And so, Sun is your ruler, it's square Mars. So there is a bit of aggravation there. and it won't take much to get you annoyed. And in fact, you might actually be feeling, you might be feeling quite tense over the weekend because of this Sun square Mars. There are things you want to do, but you're also so aware of what is holding you up, and you would like to tell people how you feel, but sometimes you just can't. Even though there might be people just right close to you, they're with you, they're around you, and you could, in theory, tell them how you feel, but somehow you can't. Maybe it's because you feel that some people are just working on a different level from you. Maybe you just feel that they're not able to deal with the kind of complicated issues that you want to deal with. So there may be a question, Leo, about how you deal with a sort of a growing sense of anger. Now, anger, there's nothing wrong with being angry, and it can be quite useful because the anger can propel you. But I wouldn't necessarily act on your anger directly. This Sun Mars square, it perhaps needs to develop. And in fact, by Monday, it's really is something that we do need to discuss, that because it's not just that we've got Sun square Mars. We've also got Sun opposition Chiron, and Sun will be square Mars, and so the question is, how do you express your real feelings in a way that doesn't cause too much upset, but at the same time, with the Sun approaching an opposition to Chiron, you may feel that you have to be disruptive. You have to do things that other people were not expecting. So this is building up over the weekend, and I'm just suggesting that maybe you should try to put it to one side until Monday and perhaps try to focus on other things. There is a Grand Trine in air signs, and I think that perhaps this Grand Trine in air signs is going to put the Sun square Mars on hold, at least until Monday. So, this Grand Trine in air signs, it's a very nice energy, and I think what we've got Moon trine Sun, and so with the Moon in Aquarius trine the Sun in Libra, that is a good reason why the Sun square Mars might be put on hold, because the Moon trine Sun is about harmony, and it's about your search for harmony, and you have a good understanding of what makes you and other people different, but you also have an appreciation of what you can do to find new links and to find common ground between you and other people, even if you disagree with them. So over the weekend, it might actually be a good time to be with people, provided it's on your terms, because this Grand Trine in air signs, Leo, it's very sociable. Your conversation skills, I think, are going to be very good, and I think you can, to an extent, be yourself, but also show some respect and appreciation for others. So it's perhaps we have a sense of moving from one stage to another, and we don't want to get these stages mixed up. So I think over the weekend you perhaps should be concentrating on the similarities between you and others, if you possibly can, and at the same time certainly being aware of the dissimilarities, being aware of reasons for conflict, but somehow focusing on the harmony rather than the disharmony. And then maybe late on Sunday, Monday, perhaps changing your emphasis, looking at differences, looking at what makes you annoyed, and perhaps working out how best to resolve the issue. And yeah, this is a theme that I will be returning to when I do your chart for Monday. Virgo, you do feel that you have to get things done. It's that kind of weekend. It may be a weekend where you can see that things have accumulated. And I suppose if you're in the northern hemisphere, it may feel like you need an autumn clean, or if you're in the southern hemisphere, it might be a spring clean. But I know it's not quite the spring, or not quite the autumn. Depends where you are. Depends which hemisphere you are. But yeah, there is a sense in which things have accumulated, and now that things have accumulated, you're thinking about, how do you get rid of them? How do you remove the backlog? And this weekend we do have a Grand Trine in air signs, and I think that this Grand Trine in air signs should be very useful in terms of clearing the backlog. There are things you can remove, there are things you can shift, and I do think that a little bit of energy goes a long way. Now, Mercury is your ruler, and Mercury is about to change sign from Libra into Scorpio. Now, I do want to talk about Mercury moving into Scorpio, but perhaps I want to talk about that more on Monday rather than now. But you can understand that Mercury moving from Libra to Scorpio is going to create a change for you. Mercury moving from an air sign, which is perhaps about the mind, and it's quite light-hearted. Mercury in Libra, moving to Mercury to Scorpio does make you, I think, more intense, and when that move changes. But I'll be talking about that. I think I'll be talking about that on Monday. But Mercury also, just before it leaves Scorpio, makes a square to Pluto, and I think that is arguably the main aspect for this weekend. And Mercury is not just making a square to Pluto, it's also making a quincunx to Neptune. And Mercury square Pluto gives you searing insights, and it gives you searing insights into, in fact, many of the things holding you back, many of the things that are in your way. And of course, that links with your attempts to sort of clear your space, clear the environment, weeks or even months of accumulated debris. It may not be physical debris, it may be mental debris, it may be just stuff building up over the last few months that just won't go away. And this weekend, I think you are in the mood for a clearance. And with this Grand Trine in air signs, Moon Trine Jupiter, Moon Trine Sun, I think that getting rid of things is going to be really easy over the weekend. Maybe too easy, though. I suppose if you are really in the mood for, clearing things up, you can take things too far. That perhaps is the problem of Grand Trines in air signs. So, for example, it's a good weekend for throwing things away, but don't throw everything away. You might throw things away or give things away that actually you need, or you might throw things away by mistake. I don't know, you have a bag, you've just gone shopping, you buy some shopping, you've got a bag of shopping, and a bag of shopping gets thrown away. It can happen. So don't be too much of a Virgo in that sense. But overall, Virgo, I just think it is a good time for clearing clutter and being very clear that you're not in the mood for new clutter. And new clutter can take many forms. It might be people giving you stuff. Would you like this thing? Would you giving things away? That's always fatal, giving things away. You accept something. Someone gives you a broken printer 10 years ago and you've still got this broken printer, and what on earth do you do with it? So be careful about accepting people's cast-offs. You might want to do it because it's polite, but I don't think that's what you want to do, because the emphasis should be on clearance rather than collecting. So that's a weekend. Looks like a busy weekend, and hopefully, Virgo, you will be able to make the most of it. Libra, the main thing going on this weekend is a Grand Trine in air, because the sun is in Libra. It's still very much in Libra. It's about 2/3 of the way through the sign, so I suppose in about 10 days' time the sun will move into Scorpio, and the moon is trine the sun, and the moon is trine Jupiter, and in fact the sun is trine Jupiter. So the sun is trine Jupiter. Okay, that's probably going to be exact, sort of late on Sunday into Monday. But Libra being an air sign with this Grand Trine in air, I think that overall is very productive. It also can be quite fun. I think it can be a fun weekend. It's a weekend where things are moving, where you can, I think, very much enjoy yourself. And so if you want to have fun, I don't think you need to apologize. You can be enthusiastic, and in many ways I think you'll make good company. People will enjoy having you around. So do consider the social dimension, but be a little bit careful, because there is just some danger, Libra, that you find yourself involved in something that maybe you shouldn't be involved in. It's tempting. It's right in front of you, and it seems harmless, but you don't entirely know what you're doing. And so, in a social sense, don't be tempted. If your alarm bells start to ring, even if they're ringing in the most subtle way, if those alarm bells are starting to ring, then you're being warned. So don't push things too far, and don't get involved in anything that has a sense that it is sleazy and dangerous. Now, I'm sure for most Librans that's not an issue, but there just may be a minority of Librans who just might be tempted, and I would just suggest that you don't be tempted. So you can have fun this weekend, but you can have fun in such a way where you're not taking a risk, where you're not exposing yourself to something that could be dangerous, and you don't actually understand the risks. So don't just make a decision to do something different on a whim, unless you really know what you're doing. But I don't want to spoil your weekend. You can have a great weekend. Things will be moving, and don't forget, Libra, your own ambitions, because we have an aspect between the Sun and Mars forming, and the Sun is going to be square Mars, Sun in Libra square Mars in Cancer, and that aspect is probably going to be exact on Monday, I think it's exact on Monday. And with the Sun in Libra, Mars in Cancer, it's about you looking after yourself and using your energy to get what you want. So think about that. I mean, I know it's a weekend. People are kind of supposed to relax over the weekend. There's nothing else to be done. It's a weekend. But not necessarily. I think you should be in a sense of preparation. You should be preparing to up the pace. And it's going to be important that you hit next week running as you move into Monday. So don't get so caught up in the weekend and its amusements that you're not ready to deal with the new week. And in fact, that Sun square Mars, it may actually demand attention over the weekend. And if you feel that you want to do something, you really want to do something, and you're furthering your ambitions, whatever those ambitions might be. I'm not necessarily talking about work or business, whatever these ambitions are. If you feel a sense that this is a time that you need to go for it, then you should go for it. And maybe you shouldn't care who you offend. Perhaps you might suddenly feel that you have to drop everything and do what's important with Sun square Mars. Or it may be something crops up that requires your attention, and things could actually change in an instant, and suddenly you are deadly serious, and the amusement just disappears, and you know what you need to work on, and there's no time like the present. So overall, it's a fun weekend, but be prepared. Scorpio, we have the moon moving through Aquarius, all weekend. And, or pretty much, I suppose, the moon does go into Pisces late on Sunday. If you're in the Americas in particular, moon does go into Pisces. I suppose if you're in Europe, on Sunday evening. But by and large, the moon is in Aquarius. Certainly for most of a weekend, and with the moon moving through Aquarius, it just may be a time where you're not actually in the mood for doing things differently. You don't want to sort of break your pattern, go somewhere you've never been before. You want to do things your way. And doing things your way kind of sounds a bit boring, but it may actually not be boring at all, because you may be where the action is. Wherever Scorpio is, that's where it's happening. And so stick to where you are, operate from wherever you are, and you are doing the right thing. And you could say, well, let the world come to you. And you are perhaps take the view, you are the most exciting person on the planet. Okay, I'm not saying you're literally the most exciting person on the planet, but treat yourself as the most exciting person on the planet. So if you were the most exciting person on the planet, why would you want to go somewhere else? Because if you went somewhere else, you would only be going to somewhere which was less exciting from where you are right now. And of course, exciting is something very subjective. It's about what you find exciting, what you find stimulating. And so that is a good reason why you should let the world come to you. And maybe the world doesn't have to come to you, because at the moment, Scorpio, I think that you are very perceptive, you're very aware of all the things happening around you, and it's exciting and it's fun, and you know about it, and it's good to know about it, and you're engaging with it, and that's just great. But in a way, it is quite personal. And if you were to go somewhere else, it's very likely to just disappoint. So it's okay to be stubborn. If it's something you want to do, you just go do it. or if there's something you don't want to do, then just don't do it, and let things let things flow. Now, one thing, Scorpio, is that as the weekend progresses, the sun is starting to make a square to Mars, and that sun's starting to make a square to Mars. It may be that your tension levels are starting to increase, and something seems to be bothering you, and it's probably a particular issue, probably left over from last week, that's just unresolved, and you want to start resolving it. And so as you move into Sunday, you may feel that it's not actually a good time to relax, and you can still be excited, but you still feel there's something not right, and that there's something you need to start to really focus everything on. And it may be you can do that in that sort of intense Scorpio kind of way. And so that Sun square Mars does have to be honoured, and it does continue. It's I think it's exact on Monday, and it does need to be honoured, because otherwise you're just going to feel tense, you're going to feel nervous, and that's just something you have to deal with. And I think there's going to perhaps be a constructive outcome here. It's about you perhaps finding, as you move into Monday, that there is something that really needs to be done. Just a reminder, Mercury is moving into Scorpio. Mercury is the planet of communication, is moving into your sign. It happens late on Sunday. I'll be talking more about it on Monday, but with Mercury in Scorpio, I think it's a time when you're going to start to find your voice. Perhaps there have been things that you haven't been able to say before, but now with Mercury in Scorpio, you can really be open and upfront about it. But I'll talk more about that on Monday. Sagittarius. So Sagittarius, it looks like being a good weekend. We've got the moon moving through Aquarius, and we've actually got a Grand Trine in air signs. So, the moon is in Aquarius, it's making a trine to the sun in Libra, and it's making a trine to Jupiter in Gemini. And in fact, we've got the sun is making a trine to Jupiter, and of course Jupiter is your ruler. So there's a lot of energy here. And so I do think that there are going to be, a lot of things that you can do if you want to do them. So if you feel that you want an active weekend, then that should be fine. And, I do think that things are just going to be easier than expected. Now, of course, I appreciate that recently Jupiter your ruler has just gone stationary retrograde. I don't know to what extent you're feeling that, but it may feel that you're somehow a bit paused, that there are things to think about. You're reflecting about the past, and you're wondering about whether you can proceed with existing plans. And certainly it's a good idea to make some changes and to revise some of your ideas. But still, with this weekend, with this Grand Trine in air, perhaps you're going to be forgetting about some of the pressures, or not so much the pressures, but some of the issues relating to Jupiter going retrograde, and you're going to be aware that, or at least feel that things are moving, that you can make things happen. And, the sun starting to make a trine to Jupiter, that does give you a real lift, and you can feel optimistic, and you can feel optimistic in other people's company. And with the moon in Aquarius making trines to the sun and Jupiter, I think that your social skills and your ability to communicate is going to be excellent. So if there's something you want to say, then you can say it in your usual Sagittarian way, and don't be worried. I think that there is a sense in which some Sagittarians are feeling a little bit of concern. I mean, maybe it's to do with Jupiter just going stationary retrograde, but there's a feeling that maybe you can't go all the way, maybe you need to hold something back. But Sagittarius, I think it's important you're not too self-conscious. Indeed, you could say that self-consciousness isn't befitting a Sagittarian. Well, I suppose we all have to be self-conscious at some stage. At some times it's important to be self-conscious. But right now, I don't think you need to be self-conscious. I think that you need to just do what feels right, and perhaps not ask too many questions, and perhaps also do make sure that your own views are heard, and people are going to respond to you in different ways. Not everyone is going to appreciate what you have to say. Some people may be a bit reticent. They may be, I suppose, a little more emotional, a little bit more intense than usual. That's because we've got a square aspect between Mercury and Pluto. Mercury is a planet that has a special link with other people in your chart, because Mercury rules Gemini, your opposite sign, so Mercury is square Pluto. So some people you might feel are holding something back, and if you do feel that someone is holding something back, you have to get the balance right. You kind of need to find out what they're holding back, but at the same time, a bit of subtlety could be quite important. So maybe rather than asking someone direct questions, you can sort of go about things in a roundabout way and just create the right kind of environment. Maybe someone is holding you something back because they're feeling a bit uptight, and perhaps you need to just do things to lower the tension levels, and so perhaps through your actions you can allow someone to perhaps say what's on their mind. Though it just may be that some things need to be, I won't say kept secret, but some people just aren't ready to reveal things. And that may be connected with the fact that Mercury is getting ready to move into Scorpio, and Mercury does move into Scorpio at the end of the weekend, or perhaps into Monday, and Mercury stays in Scorpio for the next few weeks. And when does Mercury leave Scorpio? Mercury doesn't go into Sagittarius until 2nd of November, just before the presidential election. And so perhaps while Mercury is in Scorpio, you need to respect people. You perhaps need to respect their own boundaries and the fact that there's some things they're not ready to reveal. But I think it happens. So don't push people too hard. And I suppose the best you can do is just create an environment where people where people are comfortable. And I suppose when people are comfortable, there's some chance they will give things away. But there's no need to be curious for the sake of being curious. You don't have to know everything, and you certainly don't have to ask too many questions. And as far as this weekend is concerned, I just think the focus should just be on self-expression. You are available. You are communicative. You've got lots of things to say. You can, I suppose, if you want, be the life and soul of the party. And some people want to join in, other people don't want to join in. But overall, Sagittarius, I think it can be a fun weekend. Capricorn, you maybe feel that something perhaps has to give, that something is being ignored, and everyone's ignoring it. I don't know why they're ignoring it, but you just feel that people are not quite coming to the point, and you may find that rather annoying. And you might then feel that you need to actually do something about it. That perhaps there's an issue that just needs to be raised. In which case, I suppose you have to find your moment, but at the same time, don't take things too seriously. And perhaps you can use the energy swirling around the weekend, because it's quite a high energy weekend in some respects, you can use it to further your own purposes. So as far as what the energy is, we've got a Grand Trine in air signs, and we've got Moon in Aquarius, trine the Sun in Libra, and Sun in Libra is trine Jupiter in Gemini, and Moon in Aquarius is trine Jupiter in Gemini. So it's all running together. And, at first sight, you might just regard this as all being a bit trivial. Perhaps there's a lot of talk, people doing lots of different things. It seems there's a lot of nonsense. But if you take a step back, you will recognize that what you've got here is a lot of energy. It's almost a force of nature. Okay, I won't say it's completely a force of nature because this is a Grand Trine in air signs. I don't think you can really say that a Grand Trine in air signs is a force of nature. Perhaps if it was a Grand Trine in earth signs, but I suppose perhaps we should call it a force of human nature. And with this Grand Trine, it's a force of human nature that maybe you can harness and you can utilize it, and perhaps you can be gently manipulative and get people to do things your way ever so subtly, and in the end it all turns around and it works very much in your favor, and people start to realize things and you kind of make them realize things. And this is also linked with the fact that there is an aspect between Mercury and Saturn. So Mercury is sesquiquadrate Saturn. Now that sounds a bit difficult, Mercury sesquiquadrate Saturn, but I think Mercury sesquiquadrate Saturn represents your inner seriousness, your inner seriousness, but also your seriousness in terms of making sure that you are heard, and making sure that your unique way of being is understood and expressed. And so that's perhaps what you do in terms of dealing with this Grand Trine in air. You take this energy, which at first seems very alien, doesn't seem a part of you, and you just find a way of controlling it. And this energy can definitely be used actually to energize you and to energize your message. Because Capricorn, I do think this weekend you have got a message that needs to be brought out. But don't be too tough, don't be too stern. I mean the Moon is trine Jupiter. There are some well-meaning, fun people out there, and you don't want to spoil the party for the sake of it. And maybe you can benefit from another person's view of the world. Perhaps someone has a view of the world which strikes you as being a little bit irresponsible, but it's a different view that it's a view, or perhaps irresponsible. They maybe haven't, as far as you're concerned, they haven't thought it through. It's just a bit too spontaneous. But don't squelch someone just for the sake of it. Try to sort of understand another person's perspective, and maybe it's possible that there might be someone who can just help you to lighten up, and that's no bad thing. I mean, I'm not saying it's a difficult weekend. I think it can actually be a weekend when you're able to really use what is around you in a very constructive sense. Aquarius, I've been talking a lot about it, and there is a Grand Trine in air signs, and you are an air sign, the moon is moving through Aquarius, and the moon is making a trine to Jupiter, and the moon is making a trine to the sun, and I think that really is very helpful, and I think you can really get things moving. And Aquarius, I would suggest that you don't ask too many questions. I understand that there are questions to be asked, but if you were to ask too many questions or to analyze the situation too much, then in some respects it's possible that you might be sort of spoiling the magic. You can overanalyze things. And, I would suggest that you don't get in other people's way if you don't have to. If people are happy, they're enjoying themselves, you don't have to spoil things. In fact, you should become part of, you just become part of it if you possibly can. I mean, I understand with Moon in Aquarius, that's quite independent-minded, and you want to do things your own way. You don't want to be told how to enjoy yourself, but, there is a certain sense of give and take, and, I do think you perhaps just let things run their course. Though, as I was telling Capricorn, there is a sesquiquadrate aspect between Mercury and Saturn. Of course, Saturn is your ruler. And so with Mercury sesquiquadrate Saturn, there is a certain seriousness there. You can't entirely let go. You are thinking, you are analysing, and there's something that needs to be thought about very carefully. And the question is, do you need to discuss what's on your mind? It may be that you're thinking about things in a serious way. You'd like to tell people, and that might spoil the party. But do you actually have to tell people? It may not actually be necessary. And, by the way, Mercury is not just sesquiquadrate Saturn. Mercury is making a square to Pluto. So that does give a sort of an added seriousness to the weekend. And I think when you really think about it, you may just feel that you are something of an enlightener. Now, when I use the word enlighten, I don't really mean that in a spiritual sense. I mean, I'm not talking about enlighten as in the Buddha, but you are in a position where you can shine light on something, and you can make people aware. You can make people aware, and you know that if you make people aware, things could change. Sometimes by making someone aware, you can make them less happy, and because ignorance can be bliss. And so it may be about delivering news, or it might be just something that people need to understand, and you do have a position of power there, that in some respects what people are doing and people's perceptions are dependent on you, and you just know you have that power to change everything just by saying something, just being able to, just informing someone of something. And I think timing could be important. You perhaps need to sort of let people do their thing, express themselves, and because there can be too much awareness, and maybe you do need to get your timing right. So if you're in a position where you feel you are delivering a message or delivering some kind of sober analysis, then don't do it if you don't have to do it, and just do get your timing right. But I suppose it's a reminder that Aquarius is an independent-minded sign, and it can never be fully part of things. It's always out there observing, and the observer can have an influence on what is being observed. Pisces. The moon eventually moves into your sign, but it moves into your sign very late. So, London time, moon moves into Pisces at 5 to 9 on Sunday evening. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, that's tomorrow. That's sort of tomorrow. Easily tomorrow. That's after sunrise on Monday. But still, at some stage, moon will move into Pisces. If you're in the Americas, it will happen. I suppose early afternoon, mid afternoon. It will happen, and so when the moon moves into Pisces, that's a sense that you're ready, perhaps, to take the initiative. You're ready to take action, but while the moon is still in Aquarius, it just might be a time where you feel that maybe you want to hold back a little, that you do not have to be the center of attention, that perhaps you can just let things happen. And indeed, there are things happening. And, Jupiter is your ruler. The moon is making a trine to Jupiter. And in fact, the sun is starting to make a trine to Jupiter. That sun trine Jupiter is very nice, but I think that's more about Monday rather than the weekend. But I'll be talking about that sun trine Jupiter in detail on Monday. And I think Pisces, just in general, I think there's going to be a sense of 75% satisfaction and 25% concern. That's how I perhaps categorize this weekend. Overall, you feel satisfied. You feel that things are okay. But, Jupiter has just gone stationary retrograde, and you just might feel that you need to go over something again. And so 25% of you just feels maybe things are just not quite right, and maybe there's something you've forgotten, or maybe there's something that you should be doing and you're not doing, or some little detail that you're worrying, is that little detail going to get out of hand? And so something is sort of spoiling the satisfaction, but it's, as I said, it's only 25% concern. It's try to focus on the satisfaction, but do be realistic. Not everything is sorted out, and at the same time, I'm just not convinced that you necessarily have to do anything. And I suppose you're going to have quite a lot of thoughts and feelings and insights, but again, I wouldn't take action on them. I think that it almost feels like it's a time of where you're neither one thing or the other. It's the moon is about to go into Pisces. In fact, Mercury is about to change sign. Mercury is in Libra, but it's about to move into Scorpio. It's very nice when the Mercury moves into Scorpio, and it indeed on Sunday, late on Sunday, depending on your time zone, Mercury may be moving into Scorpio. It may go into Scorpio on Monday, but it does emphasize the point that things are a little bit unsettled, and you perhaps feel that it's a weekend where you need to sit on the fence and just perhaps soak up whatever's happening around you without being overwhelmed by it. And so it's all about positioning. You don't have to be in the fray. You don't have to be in the middle of a battle. Just have a quiet weekend. Try to be optimistic. I understand there are things that do concern you, but don't let them overwhelm you. And I do think that by Monday things are going to be a lot clearer, and I'll be talking about that in my reading for Pisces, on Monday, which will be coming out quite soon. And those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. And now I want to look at the weekend from the perspective of the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is the weekend going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram 30, which is the clinging. And the image we have with the clinging is these two trigrams. You see we've got a double trigram here. And this double trigram, that represents the sun, and it's the sun over sun. And actually this trigram is about the whole symbolism of the day. You know, I suppose life is often seen as a day, isn't it? The dawn of our life, the evening of our life. That's kind of how it's over, you know. And that is a symbol. That is the symbol. Yeah, that is the symbolism. And sort of midnight is the darkest hour. And so there is a sense of the passing of time, and how the day is symbolic of our entire life. And I think that with the clinging, we have got two moving lines, and we do have a sense that some things are like coming to an end. I think that is a sense. Remember, this is a forecast. This is a I Ching reading for the weekend, and over the weekend, there seems to be a lot to be. I won't say a lot to cry about, because the I Ching does talk about crying, and it talks about laughing, and it's a sense of sadness about the passing of time, and a feeling that some things are over, or they're nearly over, and what do we do? And you know, one of the images in the I Ching of the I Ching it has is sort of old men. Do they wail and cry at the fact that it's the end of their lives, or do they just laugh? You know, hold on. You know, it's over. There's nothing we can do about it. Let's just enjoy ourselves. You know, what else can we do? And so, I'm not obviously talking about the end of life here. I'm talking about the end, perhaps, of something that we are involved with. It might be the end of a relationship, or the end of something that perhaps was important to us. We realize it's important to us, but nothing lasts forever. And so that is a great sense of what is happening. And you know, it is about the clinging, isn't it? I mean, the clinging might be, but you know, we are clinging to something very strongly, and it's clinging perhaps to something that was important to us. We've taken care of it. We've done our best to nurture something, and now it's reaching the peak, and it's perhaps time to let go of it, and it's perhaps also not something we can do anything about. Everything has run its course, and now we need to sort of move on to something else. Now we've got two moving lines, and because we've got two moving lines, you know, we move to a different hexagram, and the hexagram we move to is 25, which is innocence. And so the innocence is about not having any expectations. It is important not to have any expectations. We must not expect anything to happen. And because when we don't expect anything, that allows something to happen. And so that may put the previous hexagram in context. So I think the clinging hexagram 30 was about being sad because we were about to lose something that was just run its course. But if we lose something, you know, what next? What can we be innocent about, have no expectations about? And you know, we just really don't know. And I suppose you could be really fatalistic about it. You could sort of, think about the fact that you could see it in terms of death. Death, the innocence of death, I suppose, is having no expectations, is, I suppose, pure agnosticism, isn't it? We are all going to die, but we have no idea. We have no idea what's going to happen next. It may just be nothing. It may be paradise. It may be whatever. We don't know. It may be that we're going to reincarnate somewhere else. It's about not having any expectations. And so perhaps death is a metaphor for this weekend. I mean, a metaphor. I'm not talking about death. I'm talking about the fact that once something dies, we don't know what it's going to be replaced with. We don't know. Indeed, it may be replaced with nothing. But we have to have an open mind. In fact, we shouldn't even think about it. Let the unexpected happen. Who knows? I suppose, who knows, when the atheist dies, what does he expect? Obviously, he expects nothing, but who knows, there may be a surprise for the atheist. We don't know. But we shouldn't have any expectations. And with no expectations, once we've given something up, once we've said goodbye to something, then something new is going to appear. It has to appear. And I think we might be surprised. I think we might even be pleasantly surprised. And that's the I Ching. And now I want to consider Pluto going stationary retrograde. Stationary direct. And this is something that a lot of us have been getting very excited about, and so let's actually look at the chart for Pluto going stationary direct. There it is. London time, Pluto goes stationary direct on Saturday at 1:34 a.m. I wouldn't worry too much about the precise time that Pluto is going stationary direct. So I think that one reason people are excited about Pluto going stationary direct is that Pluto is at 2939 Capricorn. It went retrograde. It had been in Aquarius. It went into Capricorn, and it stayed in Capricorn for a little, and now it's going direct. And next month it will go back into Aquarius, and then after that it's going to stay in Aquarius. It's in Aquarius for the duration. I do think about Pluto going into Aquarius. I think about talking about the I Ching and life and death. I just remind myself, I'm 62 years old and Pluto's going into Aquarius. I might not be alive when Pluto goes into Pisces. I mean, I was looking at life tables. That's something I do, and you can look at expected lifespan, and I think I worked out there was a 50% chance I would be dead by the time Pluto goes into Pisces, which is a sobering thought. Pluto is a very sort of slow-moving planet, and so with Pluto stationary direct, it's about the phase we're in terms of the transformative energy of Pluto in general, and I think that with Pluto in Aquarius, I do think we can associate Pluto in Aquarius with something that is quite revolutionary, which is quite it's forward thinking, but it's about governments taking active control. Pluto was in Aquarius during the foundation of the United States, during the French Revolution, and you have a revolution and you have a sense of freedom, but you also have a sense of having to deal with a new government, and a new government that wants even more control. And so we're in this sort of halfway place. We're not in Aquarius, we're not in Capricorn. We're at sort of the cusp of the old and the new, and it's a question of how we manage it. Now, I do have some thoughts about Pluto in Capricorn, and the fact that it's gone stationary direct just before the presidential election. I do think that is. I think that's really interesting. So it doesn't matter, as you know, I do believe that Donald Trump is going to win, but regardless of who wins, how can you possibly expect change? It's happening when Pluto is in Capricorn, when Pluto is stationary direct in Capricorn, and because whoever wins that election, the electorate have chosen on the basis of Pluto being in Capricorn, and I think we have big arguments about who is the true candidate of change. Is it Donald Trump or is it Kamala Harris? Answer is, of course, neither of them. Donald Trump, make America great again. He's harping back to the past. And you've got Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris suggesting she's something new, but of course she's not new. I think when she was asked whether she would change anything, what was it, on The View, when she was asked this question, comparing herself, with Biden, would she change anything? Would she have done anything differently from Biden? And she said no, absolutely not. She couldn't. I think she said she couldn't think of anything. Again, it's very backward looking, and I suppose you could say that Kamala Harris perhaps represents this whole sort of, I don't like to use the word, but sort of woke and political correctness. But I think there was a survey in The Economist suggesting that America is already peak wokeness. America's already getting a bit tired of it all. So, in a way, Kamala Harris represents something from the past. Donald Trump represents something from the past in their own different ways. And so it doesn't matter. And I just wanted to remind you of that great quotation. This was a quotation that was used in terms of Donald Trump, but in I think it was 2016 or 2017 when he became president. But I think it can apply to both candidates, depending on your perspective. So if you are on the right, this quotation applies to Kamala Harris. If you are on the left, this quotation would apply to Donald Trump. So take your pick. I'm not making a biased comment here, but I think it was H.L. Mencken said at the beginning of the 20th century, but he said, I think he said it in the 20s or right at the beginning of the 20th century, he said, "On some great and glorious day, the plain folks of the land will reach their heart's desire at last, and the White House will be adorned by a downright moron." Now, that quotation was, of course, used to apply to Donald Trump. That's up to you, what you believe in. You could apply the same thing to Kamala Harris. I mean, look at Kamala Harris's interview. It's not looking good. And with Pluto in Capricorn, it just doesn't matter. Whoever is going to be elected is someone from the past. But the past can be, you can apply the past in different ways. And in terms of the United States, this Pluto stationary direct, I do think, is important. So if you look at the USA chart, set for 5:10 p.m. July the 4th, 1776, Pluto was at 2733 Capricorn. So Pluto goes retrograde as far as it could, as far as it can. So it gets to within just over 2 degrees of Pluto. So in a way, this is the final blast of a Pluto return. Although, to be honest, if you look at Pluto returns historically, I like to think of Tudor England, because England had, if you take the 1066 chart, England had a Pluto return, I think during the reign of Mary I, and she was sort of Bloody Mary, and who was into sort of persecuting Protestants, and of course she died, and she was replaced by Elizabeth I, and then it was the Catholics having trouble, but that was England's Pluto return. Went on actually for way beyond the exact Pluto return in the reign of Mary I. It sort of certainly seemed to move on into the reign of Elizabeth I. But so I don't think we should necessarily say, oh, this is the end of the Pluto return. But still, it's as close as Pluto does to get back. And I think with this Pluto return, certainly in terms of the United States, it just reminds us of the total division we have got. Certainly in terms of the United States, you've got two people that cannot understand each other, and I think that we're seeing this in the presidential election, and with Republicans thinking that it's the end of civilization as we know it if Kamala Harris gets elected, with Democrats thinking it's the end of civilization as we know it if Trump gets elected. And this division is obviously not going to go away, and it's going to take a long time for it to be resolved. And I think that with Pluto going stationary direct right in the middle of this election campaign, you can imagine that the division is going to be as intense as ever. And this Pluto going stationary direct. Remember, Pluto goes stationary direct with Mercury at 27 Libra. So Mercury at 27 Libra. So there's Mercury square Pluto at the time of stationary going direct, which is, it is really intense. I certainly think it is very intense for America. Look at Mercury at the time of Pluto going stationary direct. It's at 27.7 Libra. The United States' Pluto is at 27.33 Aquarius, 27.33 Capricorn. So the division in American society, of course I'm stating the obvious, but the division in American society is completely stark. And you can imagine with Pluto going stationary direct, it's just going to cause sort of chaos and unpleasantness in the last few weeks of the campaigning. I can already see it in terms of my in terms of my videos when I talk about Trump, when I talk about Harris. Yes, I do think, although I think that Trump is going to win, when I say something that is remotely critical of Trump, I often get comments from Trump supporters criticizing what I'm doing. Of course, when I say things that are critical of Kamala Harris, likewise, and perhaps even more so. And there's, we're now getting this great sense of magical thinking, where it's almost like saying that I want Kamala Harris to win, therefore she's going to win. Likewise, I suppose you could say the same with Donald Trump. It's like what you want, and like what you want ideologically is the same as what you predict. There is a certain sense of that. So you can imagine what's going to happen when those election results come out. Because when the election results come out, you're going to have people who believe it is absolutely impossible for Trump to be elected. He can't be elected. He's such a horrible person. He cannot be elected. It's impossible. The American people would never do it. It cannot happen. And then he is going to be elected. And the cognitive dissonance is going to be massive. I suppose it could work the other way if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong and Kamala wins, again, there are going to be people on the right who will be just devastated. How can this possibly be? So it does work both ways. But it's that intensity of Pluto going stationary retrograde that I think America is about to feel, and it does so link up with the United States' Pluto return. So, and I just wanted to look at a few people and countries, other countries that may be influenced by Pluto going stationary direct. So let's sort of quickly go through them. So here is the chart of England, and England has got its Venus at 2951 Capricorn, or Britain. This is a chart for, it says December the 31st, but it is December the 25th. Actually, just this program wanted to convert it from Julian to Gregorian. Just midday, December the 25th, 1066, a coronation of William I. And you can see that Venus is at 29 Capricorn. So Pluto is going to be on Britain's Venus. I mean, that Venus might be just the whole sense about how the country feels about it itself. It might be about how the country manages its foreign relations. There might be some setbacks or some shocks in terms of Britain's diplomacy and foreign relations. It also could be about women. I mean, I suppose you think about Princess Catherine. With Princess Catherine's cancer diagnosis, when it was revealed and when she disappeared, the disappearing Princess Catherine, that was when Pluto was on England's Venus, and so Pluto is on Venus again, and so maybe we should be thinking about Princess Catherine or other women in who are particular women in the public eye, and so I do think it could be a bit difficult, and one wonders about King Charles and his attitude to the kingship. Just a reminder that in 1936 Edward VIII abdicated because he wanted to marry Wallis Simpson, and at the time of his abdication Venus was at 2910 Capricorn, opposition Pluto. So there was a Venus-Pluto opposition there, which led to an abdication, and so Pluto is on the abdication charts, the abdication announcements Venus, opposition Pluto, and at the same time, continuing on the royal theme, Prince George of England, Prince William's oldest son, he has his sun at 29 degrees Capricorn. So he's going to have Pluto opposition his sun, and not just opposition his sun. He's going to have Pluto. I mean, I know it's not exact. Well, it's sort of on his moon. So he's going to have Pluto conjunct his moon. He's going to have Pluto conjunct his sun. So obviously we're going to never know probably how that impacts Prince George unless he's reacting to an event. But I do think that there is a chance that Pluto going stationary direct does have an impact on the royal family. So that's something to look at if you find the royal family interesting. So let's just now look at a few people sort of very quickly. Sean Coombs, is that Puff Daddy? I don't know. I get these rappers mixed up. But the point about Sean Coombs, I know is he in prison? Was it for sex trafficking or something like that? There's his Mars at 29 Capricorn. So Pluto is on his Mars. So I mean, he's already had Pluto on his Mars. He's had. So it's kind of a sort of a difficult time for him as he's in prison. So he's got Pluto stationary direct on his Mars. So that is going to have an impact. Now, just a reminder, when we talk about Pluto going stationary, just a reminder that there is a Mars-Pluto opposition coming up. It's just before the election, and that Mars-Pluto opposition is going to be, when is it? It's I think it's on the 3rd of November. So in fact, this Pluto coming to a station, we may feel its maximum impact around November the 3rd. So I don't know what's going on in Sean Coombs' life, except the fact that he's in prison. So you can imagine that Pluto on his Mars might not be very easy. And Nikki Haley, she was one of the, she did have ambitions to be the Republican candidate, and we don't know exactly where her sun is because I don't have a time of birth, but she has Pluto on her sun. And so Pluto on her sun, I don't know whether her sun could be in Aquarius. It's all things being equal, it's probably in the last degree of Capricorn. So Nikki Haley could be impacted by this, and you can see that on the beginning of November she's going to have Pluto conjunct her sun. She's going to have Mars opposition her sun. So I don't know what kind of pressures she's going to be under. Again, it might be about her private life. It might be questions. If Trump is going to win, which I think he is. What is her role in the administration? I think could be a lot of politicking. If Trump gets elected, she's going to really feel that Pluto on her sun. She's going to be very active over the next few weeks. Over the next month, or so, I suppose, in that whole transition period. I suppose as the Biden regime transitions into the Trump regime, as I think is going to be happening, I think that she's really going to be at centre stage. I mean, it might be that Trump doesn't want anything to do with her, but we do need to look at Nikki Haley, particularly if Trump wins, as I think he will be winning. What does poor George Washington think? I mean, obviously George Washington has been dead for a long time, but George Washington is a kind of iconic person, isn't he, in American history? And so I think perhaps we need to consider George Washington's horoscope here. So George Washington has got we seem to have an accurate time for George Washington, 10 a.m. So George Washington, the preeminent founding father, had his midheaven at 2935 Capricorn. And so Pluto is going to be on George Washington's midheaven. And I don't know, I somehow think that's important. I mean, I suppose you could have an image of George Washington with his head in his hands. I mean, I suppose if you're a Republican, that would be if Kamala won. If you're a Democrat, that's if Trump wins. It depends on your perspective. I suppose you can see George Washington however you want to see George Washington, depending on your perspective. But Pluto on the midheaven, on George Washington's midheaven, it just feeds into the fact that we have got the United States' Pluto return, and it really is. Doesn't matter who wins this election. It's going to be turmoil so I think that we're going to really start to see this over the next few weeks. And turning to France, Emmanuel Macron has his ascendant at 2849 Capricorn. So Pluto is going stationary direct on Emmanuel Macron's ascendant. Okay, it might be a bit off, over a degree off, but it's still stationary direct there. And so here's Emmanuel Macron and his various power trips, and he's going to be absolutely desperate to assert himself and to assert his authority, and that might also be linked with events. And Marine Le Pen, she one of the heads of the National Rally, the right-wing party, used to be called the National Front, the Front National, but they changed their name. And she's got her Mars at 29 Cancer. So Pluto is going to be opposition her Mars. So this could be quite a difficult time for her. could be quite a difficult time. And Mars might be the men in her life, the men she has to deal with. And of course, her Mars is on Emmanuel Macron's descendant, so Pluto is hitting actually quite a powerful link between these two people who are presumably going to be. Well, no, he can't stand again for the president, but certainly in the last presidential election, they were up against each other. So Pluto's stationary direct is going to have quite an impact on these two people involved with France and French politics. And quickly look at someone else. Robert Fico. Robert Fico is the Prime Minister of Slovakia. Remember, there was an assassination attempt on Fico recently. Fico has really tried to steer Slovakia in a different direction from the previous government. He is not a fan of NATO's war against Russia, and I believe he's planning on flying to Moscow next year in May to celebrate the end of, as Russia would see it, the Great Patriotic War. And he is conciliatory towards Russia, and of course, and he doesn't want any more Slovak money going to support the Ukrainian war effort. And yeah, that's got him shot once. And look at his Mars. He's got Mars. Well, I don't know his time of birth. His Mars is at about 0 degrees Leo, maybe 29 Capricorn, end of Capricorn, beginning of Leo. So he's going to have Pluto opposition his Mars. And he's going to have Pluto opposition his Mars. And of course, right at the beginning of November, he's going to have his Mars return. So that Mars return is going to be very much tied up with the Mars-Pluto opposition. And going to sort of Ukraine, called Volodymyr Zelensky, he's got his Mars at 0 degrees 15 Leo. So Pluto is going stationary direct, opposition Volodymyr Zelensky's Mars. So this is a very tense time for him. He has his Mars return on November the 3rd. So then Mars will be opposition Pluto on... did I say November the 3rd? I don't know quite when. His Mars return... Well, Mars goes into Leo on November the 3rd, so his Mars return will be around the time of the election, but then he's going to have Mars opposition Pluto hitting his Mars, so that is going to be... It's always a difficult time for him, but I think that... I mean, I've been saying that things are going to finally hit their crisis for him, but he's just stayed as president for a long time. I suppose he's got so many planets in fixed signs, planets in Aquarius and Leo. He just keeps going. He's very persistent. But I think that the Mars return and Mars opposition Pluto hitting his Mars, maybe that's going to be the final straw, or there's going to be some big event that's going to perhaps make it even more difficult for him. Now, talking about big events and NATO's war against Ukraine, NATO's war against Russia, one of the big targets of Ukraine, which they try to fire missiles at, which they've been trying to destroy, is the Kerch Bridge. Now, the Kerch Bridge, I think this is one of the charts for it being opened May the 15th, 2018. Now, the Kerch Bridge is not actually used for military purposes. It's pretty much unused because it's such a target. There are other ways of supplying Crimea. They can use ferries. I think they can use road. I think they can even use rail by now. But the Kerch Bridge is a symbolic target. It's this incredible piece of engineering that was put up very quickly, and the Ukrainians are desperate to destroy it, even though it's now just civilian infrastructure. And if you look at the Kerch Bridge when it was opened, the Kerch Bridge has its Mars at 29 degrees Capricorn. So if I were to be advising the Russian authorities, I would suggest that they would be really, really careful over the next few weeks. And I think there's a high chance that the Ukrainians are going to put major effort into trying to destroy the Kerch Bridge. It may happen not on the moment when Pluto goes stationary retrograde. It may be just before the election. Maybe just before the election, the Ukrainians are going to try and do a spectacular, because you've got Mars opposition Pluto what did I say? November the 3rd. did I say November the 2nd? In the first days of November, just before the election. So perhaps they're going to want to be noticed, do something that gets noticed, do something to destroy the Kerch Bridge. So if I were the Russians, I would suggest that in the run-up to the election, they need to do everything they can to protect this bridge. Yeah, it's not of any military importance, but that doesn't matter. It would effectively be a terrorist attack because it's just plain civilian infrastructure. But I do think that the Russians need to really watch it. Of course, the Russians aren't going to be watching this video, but if they are watching it, just look after the Kerch Bridge. Do everything you can to defend it, because I think there's with Pluto hitting. With Pluto hitting the Kerch Bridge, with Mars opposition Mars at the time, because the Kerch Bridge has its Mars at 2940 Capricorn. In fact, I don't know what time it was exactly open, but Kerch Bridge looks very vulnerable in the run-up to the election. And if I were to go to for a theoretical time, I would just go for that Mars opposition Pluto, which I think is November the 2nd. So Mars opposition Pluto, November the 2nd, November the 3rd. That's when its vulnerability is probably at its maximum, and of course at the same time that Zelensky has his Mars return. So that's something that we do need to watch out for. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about Pluto going stationary direct. I hope you found this video of some interest. If you did find it interesting, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I would be super grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description. So thank you very much for listening, and I will talk to you again very soon.